We're going to see as we meet up on Tal'Darim altar. It is cross positions. Let's go ahead and introduce the players. Why don't you go ahead while I sneeze?
All right, so here in the bottom right, we have Jinro from Team Liquid. Jonathan Walsh, who is from Sweden, but he plays and trains in Korea, working diligently, but he hasn't been able to piece everything. Still looking for his first win against Polt from TSL. Now, I feel bad because Division 5 is really hard to pick up wins. As can tell, I mean, MC and Puzzle and Moro have been doing well, but even then, showing that every opponent is legitimately difficult. The only big stomp was probably MC over Targa, but Targa was having major lag issues, and he just pretty much had to forfeit that series, even though he was still playing it out. Every game has been really tough. This series has been epic, and that's why I feel bad because Jinro, I feel like he's up against non-stop difficult opponent. Polt is very, very scary in TVT, like I said.
It's arguable, but I think Division 5 has the hardest opponents overall. I don't see a single... I mean, I think at first glance, people would say Targa would be the I guess, the weakest skilled, but he's proved week after week that he's able to compete with everybody. So I have to say that Week 5 doesn't really have... Excuse me, not Week 5. Division 5 doesn't really have any weakest links or any, you know, short straws. It's just always a difficult match week after week. And Jinro, he needs to win one of them. I mean, 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 2-1 the first 5 weeks. Now we're in week 7, at least the first 6 weeks. Now we're in week 7, and he's still struggling to find his win.
Yeah, and, you know, Jinro, again, he went up against Puzzle, Targa. His series against White Raw was close, and also Moro. It was just, he just comes up short, and there's moments where it's like, wow, Jinro can actually take the series. And then just like one mistake costs him. That's just so devastating, especially because Jinro loves playing for that late game, and in Terran, you can't necessarily make those mistakes when you play late game TVX. That said, both players are opening up relatively similar. You can see Polt going immediately for a double gas after his expansion has started. So he loves going for like this Banshee kind of expands. Did it a lot at DreamHack, and we might see it here. Jinro gonna stay naked on his gases for a while, and gonna play low tech, but he's gonna get a lot of units really quick.
And unfortunately, Jinro was not able to get inside his opponent's base, so he didn't even see what he was going. It could be a fast expansion, it could be one base play. I like what Polt is doing, though. Look at the pathing of this SCV, and he will at least be able to get in and see that there's a command center being made. And that's so important because now he can play a little bit more efficient. Right now, Jinro has to either make a lot of assumptions to play efficient, or he has to just prepare for potential Banshees at 7 minutes or 7 minutes 10 seconds around there. He has to prepare for Hellions. He has to prepare for some sort of 2 racks. There's a lot of different all-ins that aren't too common, but you still have to be careful about them. Look at this. No bunker goes up for Polt. He saves money there, and he will save money elsewhere, trust me.
I mean, he squeezed out another barracks because he's been able to skimp out on that. Now, Jinro and Polt do have some history. Everyone can recall, if you were around back in early 2011 when Jinro was making fantastic runs through GSL. And yeah, it was 2011, not that long ago, even though it was a year. But it was the beginning of 2011. Jinro got to the semifinals twice, but it was because one time, Polt was his, I believe, round of 8 opponent. And then Polt was saying, yeah, I'm going to stomp Jinro. Like, Jinro's got nothing on me. And then Jinro just quietly kept his head, like, I'm going to train hard and whatnot. And then Jinro absolutely manhandled him. I remember on Shattered Temple, Polt tried to do all kinds of tricky stuff. This was back before when Polt was like a pretty one-dimensional player doing a lot of one-base timings. And Jinro just slapped him on the ground and gave him a noogie. So Jinro is come a long way since then in terms of play. Polt's since then been traveling to the international scene and doing fantastic. And if Jinro is to start turning a new leaf, who better than one of the opponents who said that he couldn't do it back in GSL?
That would be cool.
What a storyline.
I know. Nice scan goes over everything and also sees the 3rd orbital command center. That's such a clutch move. Or excuse me, a clutch scan.
That was a flash scan right there, man.
That was a flash scan. The actual player flash. Knowing that, you know what you're up against. And you know that your opponent has to play defensive. There's a couple of different ways to actually reply against this. One is to just keep up with the Banshee and just expand. Another way is to just hold back, double expand off of this, and try to play or out macro your opponent. Another thing is to just do like a super huge aggressive push, which I highly doubt will happen. But there's normally the 3 options: harass and expand, overexpand, or try to kill your opponent. One thing to note is Jinro is actually putting on 2 additional barracks. Now, this is really weird for Jinro. And the main reason for that is because he's been known to say, I will quit TVT if I can't mech. I've heard him say that on multiple occasions. So for him to go bio is really unusual. And he's backing this up with double engineering base, so for sure he is going for a bio play. I'm wondering how he actually does this and if he has a lot of experience with this.
Yeah, it's very interesting out of Polt, and that's kind of what I was saying before. Polt has many builds in TVT. He's got all kinds of styles that's up his sleeve, and that's why it's really hard to predict him. In fact, that's why sometimes I don't like casting Polt, because I feel like I don't know what to expect. But at the same time, it's always a treat to see what he's got in this matchup. You can see his third base about to finish up, and his first medevacs will be out onto the field. Polt loves being pretty aggressive as well in the TVT matchup, especially when you watch his matches against Tal'Darim. Tal'Darim playing really strong defense was what won him that championships on Sweden homeland soil. Nonetheless, you can see Jinro eventually hopping onto the double engineering bay train of upgrades, but just pretty behind, giving Polt that slight advantage. Nonetheless, because Jinro has those tanks, Polt has to be very cautious with how he approaches, and for now, looks like we have ourselves a pretty relatively peaceful early first 10 minutes of the game.
I am surprised.
Yeah.
Also, what I'm surprised about is the income tab, 47 to 53. I thought this disparity would have been a little bit bigger, but as you can see, the income is favoring Jinro. So looks like Polt is just going to incur the damage done. That being, your opponent having the command center for a lot longer. It is kind of weird to actually do that. A lot of times you will do some fake pressure at least to force your opponent to play super defensive. And that will incur a lot more damage indirectly, whether it be, forcing your opponent to get barracks prematurely, which is kind of what we see. This is actually gearing up for the 3-base economy. But
yeah.
The normal thing is just to force your opponent to lose a lot of space. He has done that. I guess Polt is playing this okay. I don't have a big problem with
this is like pretty standard 3-base marine tank that a lot of Terrans love on macro maps. GSL Metropolis is a really common build that a lot of Terrans choose.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like a solid macro way to play. It's just like this is confidence that I can outplay you positionally.
Yeah, that's what he's basically saying. He's like, okay, you can take your advantage in the beginning stage. I can outplay you moving forward. I just don't feel like that's the safest way to actually play. Even though Jinro, I guess, I don't know. I don't want to put words in Polt's mouth because that does say I can outclass you, but still he is kind of like performing the actions that say that.
Well, yeah, I mean, at this point, Polt, it doesn't really matter necessarily of how you end up getting to max, but both players are eventually approaching a mid-game army where it won't necessarily mean much about supply as much as it does timing and positioning and whatnot.
This command center is off position just a hair right here by one thing.
Oh, for Jinro?
Yeah.
Just slightly.
That affects you.
That does affect slightly. And I think that's a mule trip. Is that an entire mule trip? Do you think, or no? Over time?
I'm not sure.
Every trip? That's actually really interesting math if you ever could think about it. But
I would like to see that.
we see both players adding on additional factories, really committing to this. Jinro, again, just slightly behind in upgrades, which means he is just going to have to be a little bit more defensive, which isn't really the problem with Jinro. In fact, he started Stim really late as well, really confident in his ability to defend. And Jinro's still pretty behind in the worker count, though. That's a pretty big difference, 72 to 58. And that's just going to mean Polt will rack up economy way faster. You can see he can add his 4th base that much quicker in the mid-left position. Love the small little things that Polt's doing, and Jinro placing random units around here and there. Jinro has a drop queued up while moving out to the center of the map, and so does Polt's army. Now, they might clash, but Polt ultimately has that upgrade advantage in about 15 seconds if he can wait for it. And when he does, Jinro cannot engage on this.
I don't think either of these players can engage on each other. This is going to just be tank wars for quite a long time.
That was a sick game.
Thankfully no, I'm sorry. I thought Jinro had this, but Polt still has this tower over here. He can go ahead and take control over here. I think that would have been a better option and just allow your opponent to, put themselves in bad positions. Right now, Polt has no real attack right? If he actually has this control tower, he can go into the natural and the third if his opponent tries to go for the counterattack right directly into the center. But I don't think Polt has anything here, really. The natural, but just think, there could be siege tanks right here, so it's very risky to do a move like that.
Jinro does a mass stem, trying to see if he can catch the units out of position, but this is such an awkward spot because Jinro obviously would love to take out the watchtower, but because Polt's tank positioning, can't necessarily siege it without taking heavy damage.
Oh, wow.
Jinro moving across the center of the map. His +2/+2 is finished, and his +1 vehicle weapon is about to finish. Polt trying to see if he can run by and hit the third as well. So Jinro is going to lose a lot of economy here, so Jinro has to really crush this army in order to really equalize things, but Polt's going to siege up ahead of time. And the third is going to drop in just a second for Jinro, and he can't really afford to lose this without doing damage back.
Yeah, this is such a shame because I think Jinro could have just nailed into the natural while it still had very limited units out there. Polt, what he should do is just lift off from here and retain all of his SCVs and obviously take the advantage in that fashion as the Marines are still pounding down away at this natural now. The Marines for Jinro getting cleaned up pretty effectively.
Oh, wow. And you can see that.
Oh, man. I'm sorry. I missed the big attack.
No, it's totally cool. You can see that Jinro trying to go for a run by the third, the same similar fashion, but Polt is just too on top of things, really holding it down. And the medevacs are really going to work. GG from Jinro. Polt takes game number 1 on Tal'Darim Altar after very strong, straightforward positional play.
I think Polt was even out of position, but the key thing that Jinro had to do in that that last fight, or not last fight, but leading up to that last fight, is take control of that right-hand side watchtower. Him not having that allowed Polt to make the snap decision, say, okay, defend my natural really extremely, go in at the third, kill that, and then I could just play it straight up after there. But Jinro really basically showed his hand. Polt was still undisclosed, and he was able to just do so much damage to those Marines on the right-hand side. It's really a power of intelligence in that game in terms of scouting. Yeah,
and Polt was able to just know exactly Jinro's moving out, forced to make a hard decision, gain too big of an advantage, and from there ride his way to victory. Thank you to Epson, the people who provide projectors for NASL Season 3, especially at the Irvine Barcraft, where some of you are watching. Shout out to you guys, as well as the people in the chat hanging out. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with game number 2 between Polt and Jinro. Don't go anywhere. More action from Division 5 is coming up right after this.